Today we are talking about 9 aspects of Trikaya Buddhism to continue with our Buddhism by the Number series. And these are, you could say, areas of exploration of Trikaya Buddhism, because it's a very wide path, but that doesn't mean that anything goes on the path. There's certain guidelines and certain ways that we explore Trikaya Buddhism, and these are some guidelines, if you will. But to start with, I want to read you the pith instructions, which you can find on trikayabuddhism.org, or you can also find it in my book, Unreasonable Joy, Awakening through Trikaya Buddhism. So these pith instructions just kind of came through me all at once. I did not rewrite this at all. It just was a Dharma download, if you will, from Prajna Paramita, I would say. So the pith instructions. First, learn to meditate. Allow a guide to show you the silence within the mind. In the stillness between thoughts, all ideas of self and the world melt. Practice meditation daily. Use the tools and methods that get you to the doorway. Then step through and be centered in calm abiding as the world spins. Off the meditation cushion, cultivate states of beauty and gratitude, always resting in the present moment. Practice mindfulness, being aware of what is. Plant seeds to support your awakening. Make every thought an act of love. Make every spoken word an act of service. Make every movement of the body an act of wisdom. With gentle compassion, watch feelings arise and fall away. Transform all you experience into the path. Temper your practice with diligent study of the teachings from those who you feel are most high. Strengthen and stretch your mind to see what the word-shaped finger points to. Know it is not enough to obtain the view. Once obtained, the view must be stabilized. Once stable, begin again and go beyond where you are. Awaken each moment to the impermanence of all that you think you are. Accept help with humility from others along the way, realizing no one can walk the path for you, knowing all exists within the mind. Recognize the clear light, the Dharmakaya. Recognize your subtle body as the bliss body, the Sambhogakaya. Recognize your physical body as the emanation of enlightenment, the Nirmanakaya. Recognize the unity of the Trikaya. As the layers of self peel away, awaken to that which cannot be spoken but only known. Awaken to the true nature of reality. May the light of your being shine brightly and bless your path. So that is the complete instructions for Trikaya Buddhism. And we can divide those into 9 different aspects. The first one being silent mind, which leads to the recognition of no self, or Anatta. This is where, when you read all the ancient books and they talk about all the different teachings, and almost all of them end with, now you need to go sit with a teacher. Now you need to go find a teacher. Now you need a teacher. This is why. Is because this world is so loud, it's so crowded, that we forget what silent mind feels like. We know it in ourselves. But that's the key that really unlocks all of the teachings, is to actually recognize and experience for oneself pure silent mind. Now, different teachers have had different experiences over the years. Like Ramana Maharishi would say that the mountain was his teacher. And that's because he was able to connect with his innate silent mind through the mountain. So in rare cases, we don't actually need a teacher, but I would say in 99.99999% of the time, and also it's a whole lot easier if you can find somebody and sit with them and experience silent mind. Now, the caveat with that is you have to trust them in order to actually open yourself up to silent mind. So anyone can walk into a room and sit with somebody that knows how to meditate and not get it because they're too shut down, they're too guarded. So this is why it's good to spend time with a teacher who can enter into silent mind, because there's a level of trust that's required. There's a level of trust that needs to be built. And then finally, when you reach that level of trust with that teacher, then you sit with them and it just opens and you're like, oh, I get it now. See, I can transmit it to you right now, but if you don't trust me, then you won't get it. And again, it's not something I'm giving you, it's something that's already present within you that you just need to recognize. But this is the basis for, I believe, all paths, is to connect with that innate silent mind. And from there, we start to have this realization that the self and the world isn't as solid as we think. We start to recognize Anatta, that there is actually no inherent self. So the second aspect is to practice. So you have this wonderful experience with a teacher and you're like, yes, I get it. And then you leave and you go about your day, and what happens is you forget. We get overrun with our habitual patterns, so we forget. So this practice where we give ourselves time to sit in meditation every day, twice a day, is better. And there are an enormously wide variety of meditation techniques and tools that we can use. And that is part of the fun of the path, is we can explore these different techniques and tools and find what it is that's going to get us to that doorway of meditation, to that entryway back into silent mind. And so we play with those every day. And as we practice, then we start to develop equanimity. We start to discover what it feels like to be the center of the storm, as this whole world is arising and falling away all around us and within us, and yet we're here present, just in the center. And that only comes about through practice. Now, of course, with practice, we just can't sit on our meditation cushion all the time. We gotta eat, we need to move our body, we need to interact with the world. It's like there's people that have gone off and spent years in private retreat in caves, and they became expert meditators, yet they're not awake, because all they've done is learned how to focus the mind, but then when something unexpected happens, then they get thrown off course and they tumble and they lose control. So the third aspect is control. As my teacher said, control, control, control. So we play different mind games, mindfulness games. We pay attention, we watch where the mind is taking us, and then we choose where to go with it. So perhaps the mind has spun us out into existential angst. You know, the world is burning, all these horrible things are happening, and we feel helpless, and so now we're spinning out and spinning out. If we're practicing mindfulness, we observe that spinning, we notice it happening, and then we grab hold of the focus of our mind, full well knowing we can't do anything about all of the stuff that's happening. But our focus of our mind we can control, and we can point it at beauty or gratitude. So we can feel gratitude for just being able to breathe, being able to take that deep in-breath and that deep exhale. That brings us back to our body, to our center, back to this present moment. And that doesn't mean that we pretend nothing's happening. Quite the contrary. We allow ourselves to become aware of everything that's happening. So we start to notice our mind, or our awareness expands to such an extent that there is room for all the chaos and insanity, the horrible things, and there's also room for all the beautiful and wondrous and magical things that are all happening all at once in this present moment. And we can play with our mindfulness of bringing it, really fine-tuning it down into our individual body and our individual life. And then we can expand it out where it encompasses our entire city, maybe our entire country, our entire world, our entire galaxy. And we can play with moving our awareness around while at the same time remaining present in this moment and controlling where we rest our attention. And we start to observe how our experience and our perceptions change based on where we're resting our attention. Which brings us to the fourth aspect, karma. This is where we're planting seeds. This is where we start to notice the cause and effect. That, oh, if I let myself focus on the horrors of the world, and then my perception changes and I start to see the world as this cruel and adversarial place, and it gets very heavy and I feel very powerless. Or, that's one type of karma that we can create. Or we can shift our attention and plant seeds where we're looking at gratitude, where we're seeing beauty. And the mind responds very quickly, where all of a sudden, as we're looking at the same exact world, we start to notice the people that are actually being of service, that are helping. Like Mr. Rogers said, always look for the helpers in any tragedy. Because there's always people that will step forward to help. You might even be inspired to step forward and help, because if you're living in the present moment, you'll notice when there's a need that you can fill, and you just do it, not because you're trying to gain some reward, but just because it's there to be done. And we can make an intention, we can take karma and actually start to use it to help shape our life. So this is where this part of the pith instruction comes in, where we have this intent to make every thought an act of love. So as we're observing the thoughts that are rolling through our mind, we can start to curate them and say, well, okay, is this thought born out of love or is it born out of fear? And if it's born out of fear, then we stop feeding it attention and we see how we can flip it around 180 degrees and look at the thoughts that we're thinking and say, well, how can I infuse my thoughts with love? What does that look like? And that can become a practice in itself. The same with when we speak. Is this word that I'm about to say, or this communication I'm about to do, is it an act of service? Is it helping? How is it serving the greater good? And then finally, every movement of the body is an act of wisdom, meaning we understand that there's no permanent self, that we're not a fixed way of being, that there's emptiness, this luminous clarity that knows what needs to be done in any given moment, if we trust it. And there is no attachment to those actions. So this is when we get a little further on the path, when we spiral around, and now we're moving from using karma to try and create a better life, to actually looking at karma and trying to understand the nature of reality. And recognizing that, oh, if there's no attachment to the outcome, then there's just pure action. And cause and effect falls away. But that's a whole nother discussion. This is all just a very quick, brief overview. But as we examine how karma is working in our life and in our bodies and in our mind, that brings us to feeling and compassion. So some people come to the spiritual path with this very intellectual, cold stance, where they're just going to logically analyze everything, and anything that they feel, they just kind of shut out, block out. And that doesn't work for very long. If anything, that kind of short circuits our growth, because it can lead to a lot of confusion if logically you have done all the steps. You did your meditation, you're training your mind, you're planting the right seeds, but yet these feelings erupt. And feelings are very transitory. They just flash through us, boom, boom, boom. But they're powerful and they're intense. And we experiencing them both in our body, which creates a whole cascade of chemical effects, and then we experience them in our thoughts and our mind. So to pretend that they're not there just creates what I call stuffering, where we just kind of stuff everything down, and then we pretend, we put on a fake smile. And it actually prevents us from feeling our innate joy, because we're so busy, sitting on this trash can, the lid's like trying to pop off, and just all of our energy is going towards shoving it down. But if we allow ourselves to actually feel the emotions and sensations that arise as they arise, and we approach it with compassion, with the understanding that, oh, I wish for this being that I am in this particular moment to awaken. I wish for this being that I am to be happy. And I wish for everyone else to awaken and be happy. Then when feelings and perceptions arise, whether they're positive or negative, there is space allowed for them to happen without the obsessive need to try and control and distort them. Instead, there's a very pure experience of just an added dimension of what is beyond the intellectual understanding. So this is a very important part of the path that's very difficult to talk about, but it's one that it's important for you to examine, because if you're having trouble actually accepting feelings and sensations as they're arising, then that's something to work on. There's again a lot of different tools, a lot of different options for examining what is going on there. There's everything from body work and actually physically pushing the stuck energy out of your being. There's energy work. There's even psychological therapy work that can be done to help you embrace and experience these different sensations that arise and fall away, these different feelings. What can happen if we don't deal with them, if we just have that big trash can full, then we get stuck reliving things that happened a long time ago. So we're no longer in the present moment, but this history, this baggage that we're carrying around with us bubbles up to the surface and colors everything that we see and experience. So again, it impedes us from actually experiencing all that we are in this present moment. So this next aspect, the sixth aspect, is study and contemplation, which can allow us to actually process and explore the different feelings that come up, the different seeds that we planted, the different mental concepts that arise. So that whole package is something, when we find patterns. So as we're doing our mindfulness, we're just paying attention, we're watching what's happening. And if we do this long enough, we'll start to see patterns that repeat. We might even catch ourselves having the same type of relationships with different types of people. It's like a relationship ends badly, and then 3 months later you find yourself in another relationship with a whole different person, but it's repeating the same exact scenarios of the one that you just got out of. So that's a big opportunity to look at, oh, well, what is going on here? So that would be a case for contemplation. So that would be, the beginner intermediate level of practice. When we have gained enough perspective about our own stuff, our own baggage, we start to release a lot of that, and it's not really holding us back anymore. And sometimes simultaneously, we can start to study the writings of ancient teachings that have survived for thousands and thousands of years, because there's truth in there. Sometimes through translations they get twisted, which is why we don't just take it on blind faith of what's written, but we actually study and look at it and examine it against our own understandings, and we contemplate it in a deep way where we're like, is this true? Emptiness is form, form is emptiness. What does that really mean? How does that apply in ordinary life? what is that actually about? And we can allow ourselves to kind of chew on that concept. That's just one example. There's, again, thousands, millions of them. So that's why it's always a good idea to have a really high book that you're reading. Sometimes people like to select just a few, and then they'll just really churn through those few books, but I like to explore more, so I have a whole bookshelf, and then I keep getting more. But I do have some that I just return to over and over again, because every time I read that again, like Patanjali, or the Upanishads, or the Bhagavad Gita, or even the middle-length sutras. Every time I reread those books, the I Ching, there's another layer that I get to that I didn't notice the first time I read it, because I wasn't able to contemplate the teachings at that deep of a level. So this is why I say the path is a spiral, because it's not like we read one book and it's like, okay, I did the I Ching, I'm done. Never need to look at it again. It's like, no, there's more if we're willing to look. Which brings us to number 7, stabilize and impermanence. So we have what we could call a spiritual experience. Maybe go into a very deep meditation where we fully let go of all concept of self and the world. Everything melts and breaks down, and we just have this mind-blowing experience. Or we go to the desert like we just did, and we see stars dance. Not a normal occurrence. Or we come to a class like this, we listen to a YouTube video, and something just clicks, and our view is suddenly expanded, and we see things with a clarity that we didn't have before. That's wonderful. This is the hard part of the practice, because we don't want to cling to that new view, because if we try to grasp it and hold on to it too tightly, then it becomes obscured. But at the same time, we need to hold that view very gently and allow it to stabilize in our mind. That, oh, things aren't the way I thought they were. This is how I'm seeing them now. And to use the climbing the mountain analogy, it's like you're scaling this cliff face, and you're just like using your little handholds and footholds, and you're clinging to the side of the mountain, and you're scrambling up the side, and you can't really see much. You're just doing the work. You're doing the meditations, you're doing the mindfulness control, you're contemplating. And then finally you reach this ledge, and you're able to climb up over the ledge, and then you're like, oh, it's like a resting point, where now you're finally able to actually stop and look at the expanse. This is the view. The temptation is to like just start climbing right again. And just completely, take the quick mental snapshot, and then now we're holding it, we're grasping that view really tightly, and then we're just going to start climbing again. But we didn't really see it. It was just like a little drive-by thing. So part of the path is actually allowing ourselves to stop on these ledges and experience and stabilize that view, so we fully appreciate it. So we fully understand it and cognize this level of awareness. And that serves an important purpose. Because when we do that, it helps show us the impermanence of life. Because now we have this new view that's become stabilized, and yet we have a memory of all the old views. So we can kind of peer over the edge of the ledge that we're sitting on and see the ledges below that we had been on before. Or maybe the ledges off to the side, because it's not really hierarchical. Maybe we were sitting on a ledge 50 yards away off to the side, but that had a completely different view. Maybe that had a westerly view, and now we're looking more to the south. Different landscape, different view. So this teaches us impermanence. Then when we start to explore and study and practice and climb again, climbing up and up and up, when we do fall, because sometimes we think there's a stable handhold and we grab hold of it and it just crumbles in our hand. And then the place where we had our foot wasn't so stable, and then now we're like sliding down the mountain. We can come back to one of those views that we had previously stabilized. And it catches us. Instead of going all the way back to the very beginning of our journey. Which does happen sometimes. Sometimes we just start flailing and we forget everything that we have practiced, everything that we've learned, everything. Just something so earth-shattering happens that we completely crumble to bits and we wind up flat on our face right smack at the very, very beginning. Not knowing anything. And that's fine. That's actually a wonderful place to be. Because here we are beginning again. But because we have done the journey before, that awareness is still within us. So when we start our climb once again, and we reach a view that we had previously stabilized, it clicks in our mind. We're like, oh yeah, I know this one. And then we don't have to rest there quite as long to stabilize it. And then we can continue on our journey. Which, when that happens, and it happens to everybody, we like to, sometimes our ego gets the better of us, and we think, oh no, I'm just going to keep having more and more expansive, high experiences, and I'm never going to feel crappy again, and I'm never going to be confused again, always going to know exactly what to do. But guess what? That's where number 8 comes in, humility. Humility teaches us to fully appreciate what actually is. Because sometimes when we have a high view, we're sitting on this nice ledge, now we can see out of the corner of our eye an even higher ledge. And we can imagine, because we have this wonderful capacity to imagine, what it must be like to see things from that view. And so we can fool ourselves and think that we are much further along, that we have developed a much greater sense of equanimity than we actually have. And life, which is always the real teacher, will no doubt provide many experiences for us to show that no, we have not actually hit that level of equanimity yet. We have not completely tamed all of the anger in our being. And we get knocked off balance. And so at that point, if we have humility, we'll look around and start accepting help from those around us. We will be inspired by those we find in our company. And at the same time, because we have humility, we'll recognize that we have to do the work for ourselves. That we can't just show up at our teacher's doorstep and be like, oh, I'm lost, I don't know what to do, fix it. Fix it for me. Wah. Which sometimes, we do inwardly. I know I do. Scream, Brahma, help, I'm lost. And that's fine, that's honest. Say, I don't know what to do. Please help. And then accepting that help means that we are the ones that actually have to do the work. You can't just keep saying, just do it for me. I'm lazy, just do it for me. So, no. So when we've combined all of these different aspects, and again, this isn't linear, so even though they kind of all bleed one into the other, this is a spiral. So we keep coming back around. Like in our moment of seeking humility, that often means that we're back at number one, looking for silent mind. Like this chaos is in my mind, all these ideas and thoughts and constructs. Just let me sit still and let that all melt. And then that brings us into humility. So again, it's not like a list where you're going to check off, I'm done with this one, now I'm moved on to this one, I'm going to check that off. They're all working, it's more of a spiral. So they're all working together. Which brings us to number 9, awakening to the Trikaya. Awakening to that which you already are. That recognition of Buddha nature, of essential goodness, of absolute and complete unreasonable joy. This unconditioned bliss of being. That there is the clear light, the luminosity of mind. That if we let go of everything, there is this light of awareness. We call it emptiness, even though it's full. That's the Dharmakaya. We become aware of the energetic aspect of our being, not just of our own body, but of this world, this entire planet, of this entire galaxy, of all of existence, this bliss body, this celebration that's happening in and as us, the Sambhogakaya. And then with the breath, it becomes manifest into this physical being, Nirmanakaya. Enlightenment embodied in this finite form. This dance of infinity and finite as our very existence. And when all three of these merge, that is the Trikaya. That is awakening to all that is, to view, and we stabilize, and then we start again. We begin again fresh. And we come around because it's all new now. And it's different. We're different. Which means everything that we encounter is new and different, and this wonderful curiosity. And we get to explore. And perhaps even share with compassion. And just our very presence can aid in alleviating the suffering of others. Not that we have to actually force anything. We don't have to make anybody do anything. But just because we have stabilized and are holding this awareness, because we have chosen to embody this Trikaya in this world, it provides a doorway and an opening for others who have decided they've had enough suffering, and they too can be free. And we can just keep exploring. So this is our path. This is what we do. And I think it's a lot of fun. Which, of course, if you're not having fun, if it's not filled with wonder, then that's a clue to go back and do some systems analysis and figure out, well, where am I stuck? Where in this 9 aspects have I gotten stuck? And when you find that and unstick yourself, then it becomes fun again. And we get to play and enjoy. So let's meditate, because that's always the beginning and the end